You'll hear today from some of the business owners about the importance of the stimulus package. You'll hear from the Vice President of the Western Stock Show, John Ellis, the owner of Stack Subs and Kerner, and owner of Rioja, Beth Greach. Just three of the, we could have tens of thousands of small businesses here really talking about the importance of the stimulus, the need for a stimulus. I want to acknowledge Chad Vortham from the Farm Bureau, Dan Waldvogel from Rocky Mountain Farmers Union. They're also here with us today. And we really appreciate everyone's willingness to share stories about perseverance and resilience. And this is really about empowering the people of Colorado to get ahead. This is the heels of the greatest economic recession since 2008. Every recession is different, right? We remember after 9/11, the precipitous decline in tourism for the following year. We remember, of course, the housing crisis, right? 2008-09, led by housing. And this one, major disruptions to the global supply chain, a pandemic, really a very different type of recession than the other two. Each one is unique. But I think that thanks to the strong work of the legislative leadership, the JBC, Colorado will be well poised to build back faster, build back stronger. I'm proud of our Colorado leaders in working in a bipartisan way to do that. And I'll speak briefly on I think one of the reasons we have more bipartisanship here. There's a very different vote that occurred just moments ago in the House of Representatives of Washington, D.C., and I'm grateful for it. The state will begin working with our legislative leaders on figuring out additional stimulus in the future. There's a lot of guidance that needs to happen, but certainly a lot of opportunities for our cities, our counties, and our state. But it is, by and large, unpaid for, and that's really the crux of the controversial aspect. Can we afford $1.9 trillion as a nation? Maybe some say it should be $1 trillion. Some say it should be $2.5 trillion. Some things think of some others in it. Here in Colorado, we only get to spend money we have. Democrats, Republicans, doesn't matter. We have to balance the budget, and I want to applaud the fiscally thoughtful, prudent work, bipartisan work of the JBC, and in fact the entire legislature last year on the long bill, because we prepared for the worst, and that is the prudent thing to do. And while the pandemic has been devastating, we've lost 6,000 Coloradans, we've had a lot of folks unemployed, we did prepare for worse. We prepared for longer-term disruptions to the supply chain, longer-term disruptions to tourism and recreation, and greater devastation to the state budget. Thankfully, those worst-case scenarios didn't come to pass. And so we have one-time carry-forward funds with the opportunity to jumpstart Colorado's recovery, putting Coloradans to work today to build a lasting legacy for our future. The focus of this is strengthening small business, improving our infrastructure, supporting Colorado families, investing in rural Colorado, and developing our workforce. And all of these funds are one-time funds, really a goal of being spent down over the next 12 to 18 months, ideally even less than that, kind of the outside limit, 18 months, with no impact on future state budgets, no negative impact, no ongoing component. With that criteria, there's been great ideas from Republicans, from Democrats, from the business community, from mayors, from across the state. Not every idea could fit, of course, with the size of the package we have, although we do hope that there's the ability to do more as we get future budget projections. But certainly all folks could agree that with this unique opportunity we have, shovel-ready projects, putting Coloradans to work, building a lasting legacy for the future, transformational investments, enormous opportunities to be able to move our entire state forward, rural, suburban, and urban, from the corner to corner, from folks that have been hardest hit, to build our economy back quicker and stronger. We have a tremendous leader from Southern Colorado who leads our state Senate and is doing an amazing job really bringing people together around helping us recover from this it's more than once in a generation, it's once in a century pandemic. I'm proud to introduce our legislative leader, beginning with, of course, our terrific Senate President, Leroy Garcia.
Well, good afternoon, It's good to see you all. Thank you, Governor Polis. It's an honor to stand here today with bipartisan leaders of this great state as we discuss a unique opportunity and solution for the Colorado comeback. As a sixth-generation Southern Coloradan, I know that Colorado's way of life depends on the rural parts of our state and the agriculture industry. Between unique threats like wildfires and rapidly changing market forces, rural Colorado has been hit hard over the last year. But these challenges present a great opportunity for us to create new jobs and build back stronger. In our proposal, we have plans to grow our proud and rich agriculture industry, protect communities from forest fires, and support workers transitioning to the economy for the future. This stimulus package represents a carefully calculated effort to provide targeted relief to those that need it the most, because simply put, Colorado can't recover economically unless we invest in the long-term health of our communities across Colorado, from the western slope to the eastern plains. With that, I would like to hand it over to John Ellis from the National Western Stock Show to further discuss what this proposal means for the ag industry and rural communities.
Thank you, Senate President. I appreciate that very much. Today is a very special day, obviously, for rural Colorado, agriculture, Western lifestyle. This is really incredibly important, and we're very grateful and thankful to the state and the legislature. I won't get into too many details, but things like funding for Colorado Proud, helping our rural and small and medium-sized agriculture producers is going to be critical with this funding. Drought response, I heard coming in this morning on the radio, Estes Park is potentially going to get 80 inches of snow. So despite something like that, or maybe it doesn't feel like we are in a drought, we have been in a drought in the agriculture communities for many, many years, particularly in southeastern Colorado. So funding for drought preparedness into the future is going to be very critical. Investments in the ag supply chain, which the governor touched on, also a critical part of this bill. I work for the National Western Stock Show. As many of you know, in the live event business, we have been devastated for the last year, unable to have events. Similar with our friends at the Colorado State Fair in Pueblo. So we are very hopeful, steaming forward for a tremendous January 2022 so that we can get back to live events, supporting the agriculture community, and all that we do at the National Western to support the great state of Colorado in agriculture. With that, I will turn it over to Speaker Garnett. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thanks to everybody for being here. I want to thank the governor and the Senate President. I want to thank Minority Leader Hugh McKean and Minority Leader Holbert for being here. We are here together doing what the Colorado voters and public expect us to be doing, which is standing together and focusing on Colorado's recovery. The legislature is doing a lot of great work this year, but this is the main event. This is what people expect us to be doing in a bipartisan way, and I'm proud to be standing here with everybody, the Joint Budget Committee members and our Republican colleagues. Today we're talking about sending relief to those who need it most, those who have been most negatively impacted by COVID-19 and the economic downturn, to small businesses on main streets across the state, to kitchen tables where hardworking families are struggling to pay their bills and make ends meet, and rapidly changing industries that demand our attention. We're also talking about investing in infrastructure, leading the creation of good-paying jobs here in Colorado, better roads, more homes connected to faster internet, and greater access to affordable places to live. Get ready, because this is the launch of the Colorado comeback. I'm excited to introduce Ann Kerner, who owns 2 restaurants, who through earlier relief efforts that we did during special session was able to receive an Energize Colorado grant. Ann, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Speaker Garnett. for that introduction and for inviting me to be here with you today. My husband and I own a mom and pop sandwich shop called Stack Subs that we created back in 2012. We're not a franchise. We have 2 locations, one in Belmar in Lakewood, Colorado, and one in downtown Denver in Lodo. We were so pleased when Stack Subs received a $15,000 grant from the Energize Colorado GAP Fund back in December. It came at the right time because the winter months were especially challenging for us and for many Colorado restaurants. The funding we received served as a lifeline to cover COVID-related expenses that helped keep our doors open. We had to quickly pivot to add more delivery partners and make technology investments to adapt to these changing times. But there were still days that were awfully quiet at the shops. We're proud to say that we have not had to let go of a single team member during COVID. They are still with us as we come out on the other side of this pandemic. Our employees are like family, and a lot of them have been with Stack for many, many years. The Energize GAP Fund has helped us in so many ways, and we have been so impressed with the support we've received as small business owners during this pandemic. The community support has been overwhelming and humbling. We have lived on both coasts, and we are so grateful we chose Colorado to raise our family and call home. We enjoy being with others who share our pioneering spirit and take pride in what they do, like stacking the perfect sandwich, exploring the great outdoors, and most importantly, giving back to others. Over the last year, we've been able to give back and feed meals to provide the front lines, including hospital workers, police, firefighters, and our teachers who are doing so much to keep our students engaged in school. We found incredible support in our community, and this was our way of thanking them for their sacrifices. I'm grateful for every dollar of relief, and I thank Governor Polis and the legislative leadership for including additional funding for the Energize Colorado GAP Fund and the state stimulus package to support small businesses like ours. It has allowed us to continue to serve our community. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thanks everybody for being here. Thank you, Governor Polis and my fellow legislators. I'm State Senator Chris Holbert from Douglas County. I serve as the Senate Minority Leader. Last year, our Joint Budget Committee and the legislature cut some $3.5 billion from a projected budget. It looks like things weren't as bad as we thought they would be. Maybe the right cut would have been about $2.5 billion. Last fall, during the special session, November into December, you saw great bipartisan cooperation as we found ways to spend about $300 million of that, and that leaves the other $700 million. When we look at how we rebalance our budget and allocate those dollars, Senate Republicans are focused on 3 items: getting people back to work, getting students back to school, and roads and bridges. And as we see different bills rolled out, as we learn more about what will be included in the stimulus spending, if a bill falls into one of those categories, you will very likely see Senate Republicans joining to get that bill passed with bipartisan support. And if a bill wanders outside of those 3 priorities, we would encourage that we take whatever dollars are allocated to that and probably focus on those 3 priorities, because we hear from the people of Colorado, they agree. Getting people back to work, kids back to school, and roads and bridges are their 3 priorities. So I'm so happy to be here with everyone standing behind me here. And Governor Polis, thank you. It's a beautiful Colorado day, and I think the future is bright. With that, I'd like to introduce my counterpart from the House. Please welcome House Minority Hugh McKean, Minority Leader.
Well, thank you, Senator Holbert. My name is Hugh McKean. I represent the beautiful community of Loveland, Colorado. And it's actually at the base of the mountains where Estes Park is about to get 40 inches of snow. So pray for us a little bit there too. But I thank our counterparts here in the legislature, because we don't always talk about things in a super bipartisan way. We don't always sit down and say, here's some good ideas and let's see how they can get on the table. Like my Senate colleagues, we have those 3 pots. But those 3 pots are the pots that affect every single family in this state. And those pots are so important because you've got families who are trying to hold on to a job, want to make sure that this year they can get a raise, want to make sure that their kids can go back to school and pick up where they left off from so many kids who are struggling in this hybrid model from the worst year ever. And so when we look at those things and when we look at what we can do infrastructure-wise and what we can do in our roads and bridges, there are a lot of things in this package that are going to help families in this state. And that's why we're here, because we care, because we actually want to make sure that everything we do can help somebody who's sitting down at the kitchen table to say, how are we going to pay the bills next week? And you know, I appreciate how much the JBC worked on things last year. I would like to compliment Majority Leader Danae Esgar, who was the chair of the Joint Budget Committee last year, who did some of the hardest work we have ever seen done in this state. And we are now the recipients of that hard work to go do good things for this state. And so when we have bills that we can agree on, Speaker Garnett, you have my word. We will come together and we will support those bills in a bipartisan way. Thank you for all of your work. And when there are things that are outside that rubric that we have, then we will heartily encourage those dollars to go to those families so that when they sit down at the kitchen table and they say, we need a dollar raise this year so we can keep paying the bills, we've done everything we can to help. I would like to introduce Senator Fenberg, who is the Majority Leader from the Senate.
Thank you, Leader McKean, and thanks everybody for being here on this day. I'm excited to highlight one of the main pillars of our state stimulus package, which is the direct support to small businesses around our state. As a small business owner myself, I know firsthand the devastating impact that this pandemic has had on restaurants, on bars, on mom and pop shops throughout our state. Over the past year, these businesses have struggled to keep their employees on payroll. They've struggled to understand the public health orders that they had to comply with. And frankly, many of them struggled to keep their doors open. They have sacrificed so much in order to support public health and to keep everybody safe. But now it's our turn to support them. So that's why we're allocating a very large portion of our stimulus package today to programs that we know will work. We know that they are programs that will lift up local businesses, get Coloradans back to work, and jumpstart our economy. One could argue that all of the proposals that we are unveiling today really are things that are going to support local businesses. Businesses need good roads. They need fast internet. They need revitalized downtown business districts. They need a strong agricultural sector to be able to make sandwiches. But it's important that we also provide direct financial support to these businesses to help them get back on their feet as fast as possible. We want these dollars to help businesses weather the current storm and some of the storms that are probably still ahead, and help them establish a foundation for future growth and long-term recovery in our state. Because Colorado's recovery depends on our small businesses not only surviving, but thriving, building back stronger means we're not leaving anyone behind, especially the small businesses that make up the backbone of all of our communities across the state. Now it's my pleasure to hand it off to the owner of Rioja in Altria, someone who unknowingly has probably served me more meals than I will admit, Beth Gruich. Please welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is Beth Gruich, and I am a co-owner of Rioja Bistro Vendome, Altria, Stoic and Genuine, and formerly Euclid Hall. I also serve as the chair-elect for the Colorado Restaurant Association. We opened our first restaurant in Larimer Square in 2004 and have been so lucky to be a part of the community in Denver for the past 16 and a half years. I couldn't be more grateful. The last year has been the most difficult, to say the least. I don't think we've ever experienced anything like this. We had 5 restaurants and we closed Euclid Hall due to the pandemic and a 10-year run of great restaurants. But also with the closures and capacity restrictions that have been incredibly daunting in our world. We appreciate the governor's recent focus that has been on loosening of the restaurant restrictions and where possible, and looking at creative ways to support our small businesses. The restaurant sales tax relief will enable the ability for bars and restaurants such as ours to retain the sales tax revenue instead of remitting the funds to the state. And this is incredible for us. This will help keep more dollars in the restaurants' pockets, and rather than spending it on the sales tax. And then, of course, using them for things like employees and other operational things. The support will be more important than ever as the weather gets warmer and the restrictions hopefully are loosened up, and it will continue to be eliminated so that more restaurants will be able to fully take advantage of this, especially with our continuation and expanded patios. This relief makes sure that the restaurants don't have to choose between paying taxes or keeping employees and keeping them employed. It helps us to continue to operate and provide services to our local communities and be part of that community. On behalf of the Restaurant Association and restaurants around our city, we appreciate the leadership of Governor Polis and the legislature in supporting the stimulus programs such as this for Colorado restaurants. We are incredibly grateful. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and Minority Leader McKean was pretty kind in his words, but we wouldn't be here today if it weren't for the entire team of the JBC staff and analysts who worked very hard last year to complete one of the most frustrating, most difficult budgets I think we've ever seen, and including, the staff from the executive branch as well, who works on budgets every day with us as well. That's why we're here today. The hard work we did last year brought us to this point today. And as we've heard, this package has a little something for everybody. Businesses, families, rural communities, and more. And I'm excited for every part of the plan, but today I want to focus on what this package means for the backbone of Colorado's economy, our workers. As Colorado gets back to work, this stimulus will support workers displaced by market changes, much needed investments in local workforce development programs, and help get the most vulnerable Coloradans back on their feet. In crafting this package, we focused especially on middle and low-wage workers who haven't shared in the prosperity of our state's economic growth. At the same time, to ensure we forge a truly equitable recovery, we're investing directly in rural Colorado and the industries that create jobs on the western slope, in my beloved southern Colorado, the Eastern Plains, and everywhere in between. Thanks so much for being here today. As we roll this out, I will step back and we will start answering questions. Thank you.
I'll get us started off here. What's the total value of this package?
Roughly $700 million.
Governor Polis, your last stimulus package you estimated would create 10,000 to 15,000 jobs. When you combine this with the special session stimulus package, how many jobs will this create?
We'll be happy to run the numbers. We also, of course, wanted this. There's some ranges in this, so we will be able to provide those based on what the legislature does. Some estimates. I would say about retaining jobs. That's what we're talking about in the case of, for instance, restaurant tax relief, creating jobs, economic incentives, some of the OEDIT programs and others, and of course relief to workers, which indirectly creates jobs because then it increases spending. They're going after stores and going after restaurants and supporting those jobs. So we'll be happy to provide some updated projections based on when the package is finalized.
But it's safe to say this is smaller than what you originally wanted, so it might create fewer jobs, because you originally had, I think, 1.3 billion, is that right?
Well, look, the state legislature will work to spend the money that they have and invest it. And if there's more money that's apparent later in session, we'll work with them to do that. We also will look forward to working with them on the federal money once we know the guidelines around that. But I think we're very pleased to have worked with the legislative leadership on this package of about $700 million, added to about the $300 million that already went out the door.
Can you talk about how these different proposals are going to be rolled out specifically, when we can start seeing bills? Are these all going to be individual bills, and are they going to be bipartisan, as you may mind?
Yeah, so for the question, for anyone who didn't hear, was more about process and how it's all going to be set up. A lot of the ideas that you see in the packet that you have before you will be individual bills that legislators will work on together. Again, a great opportunity to be bipartisan. We facilitated ideas from every caucus, both in the House and in the Senate, on what should be included. And of course, if there are additional ideas that are out there that haven't been included, we're open but they should be moving in individual bill form.
If I could speak to Jesse's question, I think this is a unique opportunity for both chambers, especially those of us in leadership, because so often we think tactically. A member has a bill, it gets introduced, and then it either passes or it doesn't pass. One of the topics that we're talking about here is summer school. Well, that's great. Are we talking about funding a class or two for a student who needs to get caught up? Or do we have the opportunity to do something really rare for our legislature, and that is have a strategic discussion with school districts, parents, teachers, students? Should we be thinking about funding a summer semester? And that's the kind of conversation that we don't often get to have, and I think this situation allows us maybe to have that conversation. I'm not saying that we should fund a summer semester for all students, but we know that students need to get caught up, and for the right students, maybe we need to think outside the box. I don't want to spring anything on my colleagues, but I think that's what we have an opportunity to have a conversation about, and we generally don't get to do that. So I'm excited about it.
Governor, I think a lot of what we see in here are things we expected. Could you talk a little bit about kind of one of the new programs, the one that will give down payment money or 10% payment money to event facilities and hotels to retain events? Where did this come from? How much is this going to be able to do?
Who wants to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. So again, we reached out to legislators to ask about ideas that they have. You've seen a lot of coverage in Axios, actually, and in other places where competition with neighboring states for events to generate economic activity for hospitality, the hospitality industry and restaurants in all parts of the state is going to be key. And so making sure that we provide those incentives so that we're in a more competitive advantageous position compared to our neighboring states is where this idea was generated.
Will it be enough to keep some? 10%?
I mean, I think, again, we will get into the sort of the details of drafting, but reaching out to the hospitality industry and reaching out to OEDIT and others to talk through what do you need to be competitive is something that obviously is going to be different in different parts of the state. So again, we're trying to make sure that that those event spaces can compete to continue to bring maybe new events to Colorado, keep the ones that we have, and that will generate economic activity throughout main streets and business districts across the state.
Can I follow up on that? And this is for Mr. Ellis too. The governor of Oklahoma has been trying to poach various different things from the National Western Stock Show. We've got a Hereford Association that's thinking about pulling out, according to one source. How much of this package is going to be devoted to helping the National Western keep what it has and build on that?
I don't know the specific numbers of what is. I'll leave that up to these guys as it relates to Oklahoma and other states. Yeah, that was disappointing for us that happened this year. It's been a very challenging year for the National Western, but we are moving forward, and we are looking at January 2022 to be one of the greatest shows we've ever had. So as far as the staff, the National Western is concerned, and our board is concerned, somewhat water under the bridge. We don't mind healthy competition in the agriculture space. So we will fight like heck to keep our group and to keep the community and the rural community engaged in Colorado with our tremendous event that's coming up on 115 years. But specific numbers, I'll leave to these guys.
And I think, listen, the stock show has said that they need money to bridge between now and January of 2022. I think the number was somewhere $3.5 million. But the legislature stands committed to make sure the stock show has what they need to remain in Colorado and to keep the rich history that the stock show represents to the state of Colorado. But it's not the only event in the agricultural community that's been hard hit. So we're talking about small and medium-sized events that have been hit. The Brush Rodeo, the State Fair is sort of on the larger side, but there are two pots. What Ed was talking about was more geared towards business events. What we were talking about here is more geared to ag events, and communities across the state have been impacted. And so this is thinking through a range to address small, medium, and large ag events.
I'll just add, look, I mean, I'm sure the dollars are important, stock show, state fair, but beyond the dollars, the bipartisan vote of confidence and support by legislative leaders and legislators in Colorado and the governor really goes a long way to showing the importance of the ag industry, farming and ranching in Colorado.
How will this work with federal funding?
Yeah. So you know, you never count your chickens before they're hatched. I know the House just voted, and we expect President Biden to sign something. We need a lot of guidance, a lot of information. We look forward to engaging with legislative leaders, their staff, our budget staff, to begin parsing that. But we just got this state stimulus out the door. We're very excited. This is a product of many, many weeks of work and thoughtful input from across the state and across the political spectrum. And once we get the parameters on that federal piece, there'll be a similar process that we'll have details on soon.
And let me speak just for a second to that. So there's a really important thing to note in this, and this is state money. This is money that we saved in our budget that because we cut things so dramatically and we had this revenue, that the legislature, and thank you, Governor, for recognizing that this is where we have that role. Where we have that role to step in and say, this is what we need to do for the state. So we see it very much as two different pots. The federal money comes down for very many of the things that it needs to do. These are state dollars. These are state dollars that your legislature is going to debate. We are going to do, as you heard Senator Holbert say, we are going to rarely prioritize how we spend these dollars so that it helps families in the state the most.
How much did you put aside in the piggy bank? How much money are we talking about?
I will give you. We've heard the big numbers here, around $700 million. But the big thing here is that we made decisions this last year, and we had impacts in this period of COVID that we will be recovering from for a long time. So the dollars we can spend today to help families in the state is one thing. The other dollars that I think that we all need to be focused on, and my colleagues have heard this as well, we have stripped our unemployment insurance trust fund. We have got to put money back into that at some point. We have got to do the other big things that we need to do. That is not the conversation today, but that is the conversation we'll have in the months to come.
Last question?
I think Dominic wants to address the JBC.
Sorry, just real quick. Senator Rankin and I just came down because it always makes me a little nervous when non-JBC members talk about the budget. So obviously this package is $700 million. Everything that's been said is correct. These are state dollars. This is money we have that we feel comfortable allocating and still being able to have a healthy reserve, being able to restore a lot of those budget reductions that unfortunately we had to make last year. So there is a lot in this package, but what's important is that it is stimulative, it is one time, it is not ongoing programs, and so it is money that the state has to allocate. What's interesting about the federal package is there is some, they are two separate pots of money, but there is some relationship, and I really do think that we have the opportunity here with some of these stimulus proposals to leverage, to put a down payment on some of the things that are going to come down through the federal dollars and be able to expand our scale of impact.
Yeah, exactly. We're actually thinking of this as a longer term issue. With the federal dollars, evidently we can spend over a 4-year period. And these state dollars, we're thinking about building adequate reserves so that when we come out of this, we have a much more long-term sustainable state budget. So I think it's a bipartisan effort to pull together, to use these monies wisely so that we not just stimulate the economy, but when we get through our budget, our state finances are in a much better shape.
Yeah, a lot of what got cut in that $3.3 billion was one-time money. How much, if anything, is going into restoring some of those cuts, or are you going to wait on the feds to kind of bring that money up?
We're back.
Good. Come back.
We are prioritizing restoration of budgets that we cut last year. So things like the education budgets, many of our healthcare programs, as we are going through this line item by line item, our first priority is restoration of those programs that take care of our people.
And I'll just add, I believe that's a priority of the governor's office as well. We just have the benefit of having updated information that they didn't when they proposed the budget. When they proposed their budget, we didn't know that revenues were going to come back to a level that they are. And so we have the benefit of added information. I think we're going to continue to get good information at next week's forecast. Looking at you, Lauren. Hopefully you have good news for us. But we are certainly working with the governor's office to make sure that there's room for stimulus and there's room to restore those budget reductions.
Again, the criteria for what's in the package is what paths, what programs that are already established that we already know are successful, how can we move more dollars into those lanes as fast as possible. So I think once bills start moving through the process and being signed by the governor, those dollars are going to start going into those places and people are going to have access to them. Many of the things that we did in the special session, many of those dollars have already been tapped, and there's still need out there. So I think it's fair to say quickly, as soon as we make it through the legislative process.
When are these bills going to start being introduced? Because the governor said it was crucial that these things move quickly and we're already a month into the session.
I mean, a month into the session, depending on which timeline you're looking at, isn't that long. In my view, it's a really long time. But in terms of making sure we get this right, that we collaborate with the ag industry, small businesses, and all the people we're collaborating with to find these ideas, Democrats and Republicans, we want to make sure we're not making any process fouls, that we're not leaving any good ideas off the table. I feel like we're in a good place now, and we're going to start moving quickly through the legislative process.
Great. Thank you all.